Hello out there. We're back here once again for Form Check Friday. So welcome to the tubes of Calgary Barbell, and let's get right down to it. Our first Form Check Friday video submission comes from Eric N. He says last week he hit 530 for 2 singles, then rested 10 days to attempt 550. When 550 got to his knees, he said both of his pecs tightened up and his callus ripped. He says when he pulls heavy, his ass tends to lift up at the beginning and usually his pecs get tight. So we're gonna cut into the video here. I'm gonna turn down my volume. Fucking rookie mistake. All right, so it looks like biggest thing is we're just losing back position off the floor. And I know I talk about this all the time, but I'm gonna keep talking about it because it seems to be one of the biggest things that keeps coming up in a lot of these deadlift video submissions is we're just not getting the back tight enough. We're not maintaining enough extension. So it looks like, and it's hard to tell from this angle, but it looks like his mid and low back are losing extension, his upper back staying relatively extended. But I think part of what's happening, and part of the reason you're missing around your knees, and part of the reason you're getting some tension in your pecs, is because A, your lats aren't on hard enough. So I want you to really focus on trying to drive your shoulders down into your lats and kind of, I say this all the time, but pinch the armpits shut. Try and pull the shoulder down towards your waist, pull the shoulder down towards your butt. And that's gonna put the tension in the lats. If the lats aren't on, shoulder's gonna rock forward and we're gonna hang off of whatever's tightest essentially. So that could be why you're getting some tension in the pecs. For sure, I would work on getting better lat engagement and getting better back extension. Practice some pause deadlifts, start filming from the side so you can see whether you're extended or rounded in your back. All right, next up, Chad Odd Z. We got some sumo deadlifts here. We have, I think the biggest thing that I'm noticing is your grip is quite wide. I noticed you hook grip in your competition video anyways. So you're gonna wanna make sure you're on the knurling, obviously, but if you can get your grip a little bit narrower, it's gonna trim down your range of motion ever so slightly, and that might help a fair bit. It can be really, really taxing on the upper back. It's almost like a snatch grip pull to be out that wide. So one of the things that'll happen is A, your upper back's gonna fatigue quite a bit, but B, you might feel your upper back a little bit better being a little bit wider, but I want you to try to bring it in so we can trim that range of motion down. The other thing I'm noticing is I want you to get a little bit more patient off the floor. It looks like you're kind of rushing into it a little bit. I want you to try to build more tension before you initiate the pull and kind of pull the slack out of the bar a little bit more. So as you sit down, I don't want you to sit down passively. I want you to actually pull your lats tight and then pull your butt down. Like you're pulling your hips in towards the bar, keeping your knees out and all that good stuff. That should help, I hope. Next up, we have Jeremy Orme. His deadlift he's got an issue with his deadlift at lockout. It's caused a couple of failed attempts in meets. And he's got downward motion, always happens around the knee and only happens with 545 plus. He wants to know if I could recommend a Q exercise or stretch that would help. So again, we're simply losing extension. When you start your pull, you're not maintaining enough tension in your back, you're not keeping your lats on, you're not keeping enough extension specifically in your upper and mid back, and that's causing your hips to lock before your back. And then when your hips lock, your back now has all of the weight and it does a little bit of a dip, I'm assuming because it's not ready to, or not used to, or not strong enough to have that much load on it. So you're having a hard time locking your back out because your hips are locking first. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that the back is locked from the floor all the way through the movement. You're going to need to practice probably some pause deadlifts. You can practice some deadlifts with accommodating resistance so that as you get closer to the top, it's going to try to pull you more and more out of position. That could help a little bit. The biggest thing is just, like I said to Eric earlier, try and film yourself from the side. Make sure you're getting that back extension. Make sure it's staying extended. That's the biggest thing. It looks like you're starting in a good position. As soon as you go to pull, whoop, we sort of lose that position. And when we lose that position, we lose a lot of power, specifically towards the lockout, specifically in the sumo deadlift. Back extension, folks. We need it. This next one, Florideo. I'm so glad you gave me the phonetic pronunciation. Thank you very much, Florideo. He's only been watching the channel a short time, but he wants us to look at his sumo deadlift. Says it's easier on his back. He's not satisfied with how everything looks. This is a double at 375. So similar thing here, but we can see it from the side angle, so it helps. We're losing back extension, but I think one of the reasons is we're not doing enough to get upright. So what I want you to try to practice, Florideo, is I want you to try, as you pull yourself in, your knees are gonna come to the point where they're in line with the bar. You wanna stop there and then try to pull your chest up a tiny bit more. Like just imagine there's a string attached to the front of your sort of collarbone here, and just imagine that's being pulled up as you sit into the very bottom of your position. Lower body position looks good. Then when you get to where you would normally pull, we're gonna get a little bit more extension, a little bit more upright in the torso, and then initiate your pull. Because right now we're out over and in front of the bar. Say the bar is here, shoulders are kind of out here a little bit. So we wanna pull in here so we can make it a push to come up as opposed to being out here and needing to make it a pull. So it's a little bit of a stiff leg kind of mechanic. We just gotta get a little more upright in the torso, and hopefully those cues help for your setup. Now we have Sudara. Issues with the deadlift starting position. This is just all about the deadlift today, folks. No matter how hard you try, I always start with the rounded back. So, this is another way we can address the rounded back, and it looks like Sudara is having a hard time because of the way that he's pulling himself into tension. So what I want you to try and do, Sudara, is I want you to try and start setting up from the top down. So if you can stand at the top and extend your back and then just reach down like this, keeping your back extended, that might help you to understand how it's gonna feel in the bottom position to start with a more extended back. Because it looks like right now, you're not in a good position, then you just kind of pull yourself in, the back doesn't get any extension. If you can get extension standing, then set up from the top down, that should help. I like to say that should help, but I really do hope it helps. This next one is from Hamish, and believe it or not, this is another deadlift. Believe it or not, he's losing his upper back, sorry, mid back, low back on this. Losing the back on the deadlift, people. I'm not mad, I really wanna help, but let's take a look at this. So he's doing some pause deadlifts here, and actually there should have been a pause deadlift video out earlier this week illustrating kind of what's happening here. So what's happening is we're a decent off the floor, and then when we go to restart, we're starting with a pull. He's kind of rushing the pause a little bit. So one of the things I want you to do first and foremost is to make sure we're in a better position, maybe lower the weight a little bit for these pause deadlifts. Make sure you're in a better position, first off, when you initiate, because we're still losing, or missing rather, a little bit of extension in the very low back, and you can see it's pretty evident in some of these. So we want to make sure we're getting a little bit more pelvic tilt, anterior pelvic tilt, before we start, and then we really want to emphasize the pause and emphasize restarting it with the same sort of motion we're using to initiate the pull off the floor. The other thing is it looks like you're kind of crowded in, and that might be why you're having a hard time getting that last little bit of extension in your low back. And by crowded in, I mean if the grip's too narrow, the knees can't get out, and the pelvis doesn't have any room to extend, where we don't have any flexibility to extend because everything's sort of bunched up and the structures are kind of rammed in there together. So I want you to try widening your grip and allowing for your knees to be pointed just a little bit out. That should help you to get that last little bit of extension in your low back. Next up, we have K.A. Pearson Jones, and he's got some squat doubles and some deadlift doubles. The squat doubles, really the only thing I noticed is you're a pretty big guy, definitely very strong. So I'm not gonna try to change much here because it looks like what you're doing is working. But one thing I might try and address with you is that in the very bottom of your squat, it looks like we're kind of getting onto the toes. So a couple things we can try here. Right there, we just kind of tip up onto the toes. You can see the space underneath his heels go from this much to like this much. It's very slight, but that's going to cause everything to sort of pitch forward a little bit, and we can see that a tiny bit on that second rep. So I want you to either try maybe some ollie shoes or widen your stance a little bit, and that should allow you to stay a little bit more upright. That's kind of a general rule of thumb, not necessarily the case for everybody, but if we widen the stance, that might allow you to stay a little bit more upright. Now the next one here, I really like this video. Your buddy's playing air guitar in the background to Limp Bizkit's version of George Michael's Gotta Have the Faith. The opening screenshot before you even deadlift is probably one of my favorite things I've seen submitted to Form Check Friday. Buddy's face is on the floor, Everybody's having a good time. Anyways, so again, you're strong. You definitely have like a super strong back, I'm noticing, because it's a pretty stiff-legged sort of deadlift mechanic. And it looks like you have a ton more than that in you. It doesn't look like doubles at 90%. 95%? 95%. Oh, okay. So these are doubles at 82%. That makes sense because they look really fast. So the other thing I would try to do with the deadlift is maybe dip the hips down, maybe push the knees out a little bit, and get into a little bit more of a quad fueled or quad drive sort of position out of the bottom. So right now, it's hard for me to like draw this with my hands, but we're here with the back angle. I want you to kind of sit here, try to get a little bit more upright and really push off the floor like you're doing a leg press. And that may help you get a little bit or a couple more kilos on the bar there. Last but not least, we have Charlie Phillips. He's got 2 singles on the deadlift, 140 kilos in both, and he's doing 1 rep conventional, 1 rep sumo. So first things first, Charlie, it just really looks like you're rushing your setup, buddy. You got your straps and your hands on the bar, you jump your feet up, and then you just kind of go for it. I want you to try to take your time to set your back flat, dip your hips a little bit, get a bit of tension in your body before you start the pull. We want to be feeling like we're either going to fall backwards almost, or like the bar is going to come up off the floor, really locking the lats in. Trying to get some of those things happening before we initiate the deadlift. The conventional especially looks like you're kind of just snapping into it. And I'm going to say pretty much the same thing on your sumo. Your setup, your initial position actually looks quite good, but instead of pulling into tension and setting yourself up, you just kind of go down, grab the bar, and pull. What I would like you to try and do is go down, grab the bar, set your lats, pull your shoulder blades down your back, get that little bit of extension, set some tension in your quads, your glutes, your hamstrings. Before we initiate the deadlift, we should be feeling tension in all of these muscles. Very, very important that we have this tension. That's what I mean by pulling the slack out of the bar. So we're gonna get all that set before we start the pull, and then you're gonna push the floor like Chuck Norris driving the earth away from himself as opposed to lifting the weight. All right, Charlie, that is that. Form Check Friday is finito. We're at like January 7th. I'm sorry guys, we have so many videos to get through. I'm emailing or form checking on the channel every single video that comes in. I hope that's of some value to you guys. I know that you might be getting impatient because we haven't gotten to your video yet. I apologize, but we are making a very, very good effort to try and get everybody through this that submits. We want to help everybody we possibly can with this. So we're at January 7th emails right now, and hopefully we can work through a bunch more next Friday. But anyways, thanks for tuning in. If you liked the video, hit that thumbs up, leave a comment if you have any questions below, and we will see you next time. Take care.